Hello and welcome back to the 100% Real with Ruby. So today we are talking to Mr. Stephen, and I didn't know whether it was Stephen or Stefan, but
I get Stephen as always. Otherwise, as everyone else likes to call me, Dallas. Since
Dallas. Yeah, I was gonna call you Dallas because I always see people refer to you as that. I'm like, yeah. So we're gonna start off by pretty much talking about and digging into what Dallas comes across to be the biggest struggles with his clients and thus his biggest passions in terms of emphasizing exactly how to go about these issues to bring about a response that's more working within a lifestyle versus headbutting a client all the time. So what do you find to be, it's always the headbutts if you don't try and fit it into a lifestyle. So what do you feel to be the biggest struggles with your clients and the people you talk to on a daily basis?
obviously, you know yourself, there is quite a lot that does go awry with a lot of people, but a lot of the struggles come down to a lot of how people have grown up in the life, grown up in the world, some of the ideas they have about themselves, how they see and perceive the world, because the environment that you grow up in and the environment that you create for yourself is quite a big predicator on your outcomes. And that's one of the biggest issues I find. So in terms of internal beliefs, internal belief about themselves, how they see themselves, play out in so many different directions, and they play out in so many different ways. And we often see such crazy changes over a period of time. And that's some of the biggest struggles, because what ends up happening is, depending how you see yourself or how you even feel about yourself and the thoughts that come from that, they're going to interact with your behaviors. And those behaviors go in tandem now in terms of how you interact with the environment and how the environment interacts with yourself. So it's like this whole model of when your beliefs do not align with what you want, there's always going to be a kind of miscommunication. And that miscommunication turns out to be a massive struggle for a lot of clients, because at that period of time, you want to do something good, you want to do something better for yourself, but the internal belief is not congruent with what you're trying to do. So cognitive dissonance. And then what ends up happening is you're either going to do your utmost to try and get to where you want to get to, or you're going to end up falling to a lesser behavior. And 9 out of 10 times, everyone falls to a lesser behavior until they deal with what is actually holding them back. So what is it? The belief? Is it the thought? Is it the idea about themselves? Or is it the environment and everything that's come from it? Once you start addressing that, you start noticing clients actually have an easier time for pretty much anything. Because no matter what life throws at you, if you can understand your triggers in that very moment, you can understand why you've been triggered, you can understand some of the thoughts that come from it, why you behave in a certain way, you can shape your environment to help you get where you want to get to.
So what are some common stories that you hear from clients that hold them back that they believe to be true, but it's just this facade because they're fearful of moving forward or they're fearful of feeling a certain way that they used to feel again? And how do you work through those things? What tactics do you use and what methods do you use to break through that wall?
Well, it depends obviously what it is. So for a lot of people, it can come down to just say, I don't believe in myself. So somewhere along childhood, you can always link something, as typical on therapy or psychologists always go, you can link something to childhood. It's pretty much 9 to 10 times something in childhood. So if you look at it from a childhood perspective, that if you had, say, a parent, for instance, put you down, if you had a parent who said you couldn't do something, right? You internalize that, because if they couldn't do something and they couldn't figure out how to overcome an obstacle, you model the behavior. That's literally what childs do. You see it every day. Like, children learn how to play by modeling someone else do something. We model how we do something thanks to seeing a parent do it. And that's how we learn a lot of our internal behaviors at a young age. The problem is we carry that to adulthood. We never question it. That's a now belief. That's a belief about ourselves. That's a core belief, but a core belief is not a fact. And that's the biggest issue that comes to it. So when a person believes, I cannot push forward, I cannot dig deeper in this diet, I cannot make changes because I'm not good enough, you need to challenge the core belief now. So it's like, what is the evidence? Where did it come from? And this is, we use like Podesky's five-factor model, which is thoughts, your behavior, and then your situation, your environment, and then how does everything encompass together. So everything connects with each other. But when you start looking and going, right, so tell me, what was the environment where you felt triggered? So when you felt that you weren't good enough, and then we usually tell you, say, if it's today, say the environment I was triggered in would be at home when I was trying to eat food. I wanted to go for, say, a binge. So the environment would be at home. With the situation, well, I was feeling like I couldn't do what I was intended to do. And then you start looking at it and going, what was the thought? I'm not good enough. I don't feel great about myself, but the food gives me a sense of relief. So then you can look at the mood then. So what was the mood affecting that behavior? And from there, now you can start getting the person to build each subsequent thing out. And now you can challenge it. So that means, what was the evidence for you feeling great from the food? And the person will be like, well, every single time I eat food, I feel better. And then you ask, what is the alternate view of that? What happens when you actually do that? Are you feeling good in the short time, so in the moment, or is it giving you long-term pleasure? And it's always short-term gain over long-term gain. So then that's how you challenge a person. You get them to see not only in the present, but also in the future. And that's how you challenge some of their thoughts. So it's always using a dual model. So what is one way of thinking and what is another way of thinking? But it doesn't just switch what everyone believes. It's like, great, I've done this once, and they're going to have to deal with this again. You have to continuously go through the model until you start realizing that your core understanding or your core belief is not congruent with what the world is. But it takes time. And there's nothing wrong with it taking time, but you got to kind of open up to the process. You kind of just have to be a part of it and be like, right, what am I going to learn about myself? And you'd be surprised that, like, you do it 3 to 4 times and you start noticing a lot of changes in how you view the world, especially when it comes to like negativity as the world as well. If you can start seeing the world in a more optimistic view, you start noticing a lot of change becomes a little bit easier. And it's not that hard for you to change. But if you've lived all your life in a negative, pessimistic view, well, trying to be optimistic now is a big change. But just simply looking, going, right, instead of going, I can't do this, looking and go like, what can I do to make sure I can do this? So what are the small steps? I haven't changed from a pessimistic view. I've just looked at going, right, I'm going to look at it as a goal orientated. And you see, as you keep doing that for it, you start noticing you become optimistic in how you view things, because now everything is just one small little step. Okay, I can do that.
I love that bit that you just ended on where you said it's one small little step, because when you're so used to identifying yourself with a struggle or identifying yourself as someone who always has meltdowns or who always goes to, let's say, food to fulfill a certain emotion. I'm saying this because it actually came up in one of the feedbacks for the check-in today after I already said something to her. She's like, it's a new day today. I just have to get past this meltdown, but I have a lot of meltdowns. I'm like, no, it's not a new day today. It's not a new chance to start today. It's a new day every day, but it's also a new moment every moment. And don't think about it as a meltdown. It wasn't a meltdown. It was just something that happened. Let it wave past you. And I guess that's where it really comes down to what you said with the challenge yourself and ask yourself questions. Because if we let ourselves dwell in the moment of that emotion without stopping questioning ourselves and then actually actively reparenting ourselves, because I love the way that you mentioned the parenting. I'm like, yeah, this is about reparenting. But how are we going to reparent ourselves? The more that we can stop and not just get down about it, swipe it aside and say it's a new day, but actually act on it, physically act on it, do something about it, like go through the process and talk to yourself about it, then we can actually break through it the next time. But if we just shrug it off, it's going to keep coming back again until we actually go through that process. But it's like when you do a squat, but you squat like a total, like a dog. Let's just say you squat like a dog, like you can't put a bar on your back like a weird person. And you've learned that pattern over time. You're not going to learn how to squat properly within the space of a day or a week. You have to keep doing the reps to then learn how to do a proper squat. Sometimes it may mean, okay, you're going to have to take the barbell off your back because you're not ready to actually load it on your back yet. You're going to have to like regress it all the way back to base level, and you have to be okay with that. But like this can be something that you dig into more, because I see it so often where people are afraid to take some steps back because all they can see is how far they have yet to go. But if you take those steps back, give yourself the chance to reparent yourself, just stick with the absolute basics, even if it's just one baby routine after the other, which is just showing up or just going to the gym, walking on the treadmill only, going to the gym, walking on the treadmill only, because you can't get into actually training, or just as simple as meal prepping and basic things, or just switching out the fact that you're not doing any fast food. Instead, you're buying like a proper meal container from the frozen section in the fridge. Like, it's just, what can you do better to go all the way back so then you can address all the other issues? So I guess, how can you go into that whole let's go back? Because this is something touching on what you put up with. Sometimes you have to do what you don't want to do because, like, you're an adult, you're not a child. Like, you're going to have to realize sometimes you're going to have to bite the bullet, do what you don't want to do so that you can actually get past that wall. So I'll let you ramble on about that post because it was my favorite.
Yeah. When it comes to things, we often forget that, like, for majority of people in the world, we aren't all lucky to have a job that we love. It's just the nature of the world. But we go to work every single day because we know we're going to get a paycheck. We suffer through all the crap life throws at us on a daily basis because that is what's being an adult. You can't change what life throws at you. You have no ability to control it, but you can control your reactions to the situation. So when someone tries to tell me that, oh, it's hard to do this, I can't do this, it's like, but you're the person in control here. You're the adult. There are going to be times where things are going to be uncomfortable. There are times when you're going to have to do things you don't want to see progress. I'm like, you didn't get through school for doing just things you wanted to do. You didn't get through university from doing things you just wanted to do. I was like, that's not how things work. You are always pushed into a situation where you have to overcome the situation. You have to rise to the challenge. You're now put in a situation where it's up to you to do what is necessary to see the better health or better growth from yourself. So I always get so infuriated when someone goes, yeah, but I don't like something. It's like, I get it, but it's going to make you better. You can complain about it once you've done it. By all means, I'll allow you complain. You can complain along the whole journey. But if your stepping stone or your goal is to get somewhere and you're refusing to do the work, well, then it's no longer a goal, is it? It's just a dream. And you got to understand that aspect, that it's like, if it is something you truly want, it doesn't matter whether it's raining, it's hailing, it's storming, you're going to go out and get it. You're going to do the necessary work. You are going to suffer in some way and form. And if you want to take it from a very philosophical way, life is a form of suffering. So it's like, you are an adult. You have the ability to choose and see the situation as it needs to be. So if you reframe the situation from something, I don't like this, to this is going to make me better, you start noticing the hurdles along the way start to drop. You start looking and going, yes, I might not actually like running, but there's a benefit to it. And what is that benefit in the long time? Because we're all too busy looking at what is the benefit now. It's what is the benefit in 20 years' time, when I'm no longer having to need to be in a wheelchair, when I'm actually out running and everyone else is there sitting there dying of heart disease. What is the benefit then? That future pacing now allows you to overcome so many obstacles along your way, because you actually get to see what is you in a different form. What are you going to benefit from this? And that's the part of being the adult, because as a child, we don't have that capability. We cannot see into the future. We cannot thought project because we don't have that capability. That only starts coming into our adulthood. And when that's the reason, and when our prefrontal cortex is only fully developed roughly at the age of 25. So when our cognitive functions only start to come in our early to late 20s. So if you expect a kid or a teenager to future pace, it's not going to happen. They can't see the world in that view. You as an adult can see what the benefit of doing something you don't like now and what the benefit will be in 20 years time, 30, 40 years time. So it's like, don't give me that nonsense. reframe that and look and go, right, how am I going to get to there? Or what is this going to be a benefit? And how can I look at this in a better way of thought or a better way of light? And when you're in that position, you'll see so many things can change overall. It's like there is nothing stopping you anymore. It's you now, the only person that's ever going to be able to stop you. And once you realize that, you know, life becomes different, because now you actually realize that if your goals are not achieved, it's not because of the external environment, it's because of yourself. You haven't made a change. You haven't put the time and effort into it. You haven't actually gone and done the work. So when you can see it that way, the only person you have to blame is yourself for not stepping up to the challenge. And people don't like that, because that means everything is on you now. Yes, the environment does have some play. Luck has some play. But it's still going to come down to you putting the work in, and accepting that is such a harsh reality for a lot of people, because you don't want to feel that sense of uncomfortableness that your life that you want is predominantly based on your choices. You can't change the past choices, but you can do everything for the future. So it's like you have countless, infinite amount of choices to make from every single moment. The past is gone. That's already cemented. You don't have a choice, but now you do. So it's like, what choices are you going to make? Are you going to overcome this, or are you going to stay the same? And it's your choice. But it's like, from every single one of the clients we deal with, it's trying to get them to understand it's like your choices do matter, and you have so much control of them, and you have so much control of you and your environment. You just don't realize it. And that's the big key. Once you can see that, well, challenges become something that you actually really want to do. It's something that you're like, cool. If I can run a 5K under 20 minutes, you're like, perfect. Let's try something different. What can I do to see what like this body, this machine can truly do? How far can I push it? What can I attain? And then you start seeing people's mindsets start shifting. It's now more based on, hey, look, I can do this. What else can I do? Where can I go? What can I do? How can I help people better? I'm in a good position. What can I do and actually help others around me? So it's like that whole third degree knock-on effect that ends up happening when people get to that stage, which is beautiful.
And you can tell in the tone of your voice, everything is so optimistic. Like your tone of voice is optimistic. And that's what I feel a lot of people lack. And like knowing that the future is in our hands and doing that future pacing, it's like, yeah, but everyone clings onto what happened before, but there's that crucial step of forgiving yourself first. And yes, shit is going to be hard. And that's actually a post I have planned for today. I'll tag you in that one. But yes, it is going to be hard, but it's not impossible. You don't have to do it perfect, and you don't have to do it right. You don't have to be correct at it the first time. It's about learning it, getting better at it, getting rid of the useless junk, getting the good data, using that data to then form another attempt. Okay, maybe it's not how you want it. Get rid of the useless data and go again. So I guess this is where social stigma, like on Instagram and all that stuff, comes in, because everyone wants it to be effortless. But it's not just Insta thoughts and TikTok twats that make everything like more difficult for us as coaches and clients themselves, because not only are the social media people, like influencers, you want to call them, making things look so easy, but then there's the dogmatism and the dogma that coaches put out there that it should be easy. You shouldn't be struggling. You shouldn't be hungry. You shouldn't be this. You shouldn't be that. It should be easy. You should enjoy it. And they don't realize that some people really need to actually push that a little bit harder. You need to do things you don't like. I don't like cardio. I don't like this. That's too hard. I don't want to do this. It's like, yeah, but of course it's hard. And of course you're going to actually struggle. Of course you're going to have to do shit you don't want to do, because look back to who you used to be, what you used to do, the lifestyle you used to live, the things you currently now like and hate, the things you currently now find easy and find hard. The stuff you find easy is what's got you to where you are now. The stuff that you used to do and all that other bullocks is why you are the way you are and why your environment is the way it is, because those were your choices then. So now you're going to have to forgive yourself for that and embrace the suck. Realize, yeah, you're going to have to actually push through. Yeah, you're going to actually have to fail. You're going to have to struggle. You're going to have to put your hands up in the air because it's stuff you've never done before. So I guess that opens up a can of worms for you because that covers a lot of what you talk about. So
yeah, like so like you're putting in like overcoming the suck. So like I like to give every single client and pretty much anyone I know to some way or form like the dip lecture, you know. So like every single point in life or any single point of your journey, there's going to be a period of time where there's a dip. Period. Right. And it's gonna happen. You don't have a choice. But it's the choice you make in that moment that decides what's going to happen for future references. But you also need to understand what it means. So, for instance, if you're doing, say, full marathon, your dip is not going to come at the half marathon part. It's going to come when you've got about 5 to maybe 10 kilometers left in your marathon, when you pretty much are finished. That's when the dip comes. That's when the thoughts pair up going, I'm not good enough. I can't do this. This is too hard. I bit off too much. Like, what did I think I was going to do? That's the dip coming there, where all energy starts to go down, the thoughts start to push in, everything is lined up against you. So it seems you have a choice in that moment. You can take the don't weaken, you know, hard work pays off. I'm going to do this, or I set myself a goal. I'm going to go through it. Or you can just pack up and leave. Majority of people get to the dip and go, right, instead of pushing through, they go, that's it. It's too tough. Feels horrible. I'm not going to do this. And that's often where you now create behaviors for a lot of other aspects in life. So when anything else gets tough, when anything seems to push you in a direction where you are not currently capable of handling it, you dip out instead of pushing forward. Now, the difference is when you need to understand how this works is there are times where dipping out is a good thing. And there are times where actually pushing forward is more beneficial. And the key is trying to understand when is it beneficial and for dipping out and when is it beneficial for pushing forward. So when it comes to things, it's if you look at it and you go, if you've put in extreme amount of time and you completing a marathon is going to give you satisfaction, dipping out seems pointless. You know, you spent the last half a year doing it. Cool. If you put it, say, a short amount of time and you still couldn't do it, but even completing it, you're not going to gain anything more, well, then dipping out of the marathon is fundamentally an okay thing to do. But the question is, you need to understand what your past is. You need to understand where you are presently to understand where you're going to go forward. And that's the difference. You can apply the dip to finance. You can apply it to business. You can apply it to any aspect in life. If you've invested a sheer amount of cash and you're only going to get maybe 10 quid extra, is it really worth it if you can just recover all of your money? Pretty much good to dip out. But if there are chances of return is doubling your money, why would you not take that extra step to double your money? So it's understanding where the dip is and how you overcome it. So for myself, it's whenever I get dips is when it comes to cardio. I'm like, I like lifting, just like you do. That means that whenever I'm in it, I always go, cool, there's the dip. I acknowledge when the dip is occurring, and then I have that conversation in my head. I'm like, this is a dip. Am I going to prove to myself that every time the dip occurs, I can push past this, or I'm going to set a precedence that I'm going to back out just because I feel a little bit tired? I'm not going to do that. And that's how you start creating more of that grit personality. So like Angela Duckworth, absolutely amazing human being when it came to figure out how grit is and kind of bringing in that kind of perseverance personality and finding that a lot of people with a grittier personality often do better in university, have better jobs, have better ability to handle life stresses because the ability to persevere is at the core construct of it. But it's not something that someone just wakes up and has. It's something you can develop over time. And I know like even Matt Fraser talks about it coming from a back injury and going to, 5-time CrossFit champion. It was like, well, hard work pays off, developing the grit personality. And he spoke about the same thing. He goes, put yourself in a situation where the odds are against you. And your job now is to climb the mountain and beat those odds. He goes, first time you're going to do it, you're not going to get there. Second time, you're not going to get there. However, if you keep trying to climb that mountain, soon that mountain will not be big enough for you. And that's the key to developing that gritty personality. So it's like that dip and that grit come together. a lot of clients have never been put in a situation that develops it, because whenever they do get to it, they automatically dip out. And that's not what you want. You want them to go, right, even if this is going to be a failure for you, I want you to push to the end, and I want you to notice how it feels and what did you get knowing that you crossed the line. And then you see when they push to it, they're like, wow. And that's what I do sometimes with cardio with clients. I go, right, you only like doing 10 to 15 minutes of cardio. Cool. You have an hour and a half cardio. Yeah, but I hate it. I went, don't care. Go get it done. And they don't want to do it. And they're like, I hate it. This hurts. This is not nice. I'm like, cool. Tell me after, once you've done your hour and a half cardio. I was like, it doesn't matter how long it takes you. If it takes you 4 or 5 hours to do it, I don't care. Go and do it and come back to me. Get through. And they're like, yeah, I hate it every second. But as soon as I finished, I was like, holy crap. What the hell? I was not expecting. I was like, exactly. You pushed through something you didn't think you could do. Now you have a whole different outlook on what it means to do that type of cardio. Yeah. But can you apply that same mentality to other areas in life? And it's like, yeah, I can. And I'm like, good. Welcome to applying some gritty personality. Now you're building it in the person. So now the person can look at it in the situation and go, I'm more up to challenges. But it's like, not everyone can be bathed in fire, as I like to call it. You have to sometimes step them up to the approach. That means building your grit personality. Some, depending on the person, you can literally, like myself, throw them into the water and go, good luck, and watch the person automatically start doing what's necessary to overcome the challenge.
I loved all of that. And it's not something you can just develop from one time of pushing through it. It's something you're going to have to keep applying and applying to actually, because you spent your whole life without grit. How do you expect to get it from just pushing through it once? And I've even experienced it with my own sprints. And you hear me cry to you about my sprints. But it's like, I dread going out every single time for that. But as soon as I finished it, I honestly cannot even explain the feeling I get for like that accomplishment. And if you know pretty much what I preach, my word is always, how do you feel? How do you feel? And you mentioned that word so many times in what you were saying, like, okay, cool. So how do you feel now that you once accomplished that? That feeling afterwards is the purpose behind it. And it's almost like you said about the investment thing. If you're just going in and there's not that much return at the end because you're not actually putting a feeling value to it. And we'll talk about values and beliefs even more after this, now that we have something else to attach it to. But if you're not actually linking this outcome to your core values, to the things that mean most to you, like your family, your partner, your relationships, it could even be your career if your career is one of the most important things to you. Like, everyone has a different meaning, or they give a different meaning to what activities they are doing and like, you're not going to just set out on a journey with nothing behind it. Yeah, okay, you may do it half-heartedly to start with because it's something new to you, but then you'll learn along the way and then realize, okay, maybe a 10-day bloody juice cleanse is not for me. Let's try something else again. I wanted to relate everything you just said back to nutrition, so that's what I'm doing now. So, okay, that might have been an amazing time to actually agree with the dip and dip out. A 10-day juice cleanse, it's a short-term thing. It doesn't have any real reward at the end of it. You haven't really worked hard for it, and it's not sustainable. It's not good for you. You are well aware that this isn't something that you can literally do. You don't see any return to the investment by the end of it. Okay, you may lose whatever, but it's got to a point where you're realizing that this isn't cool. So then you might try something else. You might try Insta Thoughts 12-week booty challenge. They have you on like 1,000 to 1,200 calories. They have you smashing you with two-a-day sessions, all this cardio, blah, blah, blah. You're going amazing through it. You're trucking along. You're almost at the end. You're at the week 10 and you're realizing you can't do it anymore. Yeah, you did it for 10 weeks, but you're still realizing that there is no real return to the investment here because, like you said about the process, it's that process of overcoming. It's the process of realizing how you feel and growing through it. But if you've done all of this and made your whole life about this, there is no real purpose to that anymore. There is no real feeling. It's more like you were slaving yourself away to it. So this is where the whole focus process and well, focus on the process comes in, because if you're not going to focus on the process, you will never develop these attributes that actually will sustain the lifestyle that you desire to live. Like, you're not going to have the grit, because that was just this short-term thing because you saw the end line, but then you crashed and burned. So relating that to the whole, I guess it's you holding yourself to an unreasonable standard. And I guess actually this is something I really want you to talk on and link it back to the core beliefs and values. Are we solving a visible problem, or what is the root problem? Like I said about, there is always a push behind going this way or that way because you want this hack thing. But why? Why really is it? What is the root problem? Instead of just solving a visible problem, instead of just saying, oh, whatever it is, what are some visual, let's just say, scapegoats that you hear people put out there that really aren't the root problem? And how do you link this back to core beliefs and values?
Well, first off, people, I would say most of the time, majority of the time, don't actually know what they want or desire. They're like, no, I would, for instance, I want to be lean. I want to have abs. It's like, yeah, okay. Do you actually know what you truly want? I want to look like that. No. Actually, what do you want? Because when you show the process, when you show everything up front, you get the, oh, face. And you're like, so you don't actually want that. You want a feeling associated with having X, Y, Z. And that's one of the biggest things. It's a way to bolster confidence, a way to increase self-esteem. So you use the downward arrow approach, which is essentially, if you say you want abs, right? And you go, okay, tell me why. So you can ask why 5 times, you can keep going. The aspect of the downward arrow is you keep going down till the person cannot answer anymore. And usually you get to, I feel bad about myself. I'm lonely. I don't have self-esteem. I don't have self-confidence. I don't see myself great. The way I think myself is not great. And the further and further you go down, the closer and closer you get to the actual belief of why they want to do something. And that is what you're looking for. So if someone wants to get abs and you ask them long enough, or ask them so many whys, or you reframe it in so many ways that you finally get to the point where they cannot answer you back anymore, it always comes down to, it is going to make me more confident. And then you're like, right. So it's not the abs you actually want, it's confidence you need, desire, and are looking for. So that means when we're going to do it, the problems that you face that you don't want to stick with your diet is not because the diet's hard, it's because you don't see how this relates to your confidence. You don't see how this is going to boost your confidence. But you're like, I still want the abs, because the idea of the abs is still going to give you confidence. So then it's like, right, now we know that what you see on the top of the person not adhering to the diet is not because of they have an inability to do it. It's because there's a miscommunication. So it's the confidence is the issue. So now we know the root problem is that whatever we do needs to be linked to their understanding of how we're going to boost their confidence. So if they don't feel like a certain thing is going to be boosting their confidence, they are not going to do it. But they are going to somewhat try, because I've invested in this process. And because I've invested, I need to at least do something. We're still going, right, we're not going to diet. We're not going to do any of this. Let's just work on focusing on getting your confidence in a position that allows you to do everything else. And I'm like, you understand that it's building the foundations. Whether it takes 1 year or 20 years to build your foundation, you stick with the process and you build yourself. Then you have the ability to do whatever you want. If you look at it from a child's perspective, a child cannot run. It doesn't have that ability until it learns how to crawl, until it learns how to stand up, and actually learns about how the body goes through it. It goes through repetition, failure after failure after failure. But the kid doesn't see it as failure. It sees it as part of life. This is what we do. I have an end goal. I want to move around the house. I want to get that toy over there, and I can't get that toy. Get that toy now. And how do I do it? I need to get up and I need to fall. I need to get up and fall. And then you see the kids get so enthusiastic about their failures, because it knows that the longer it does that, the quicker I get that toy across the room. And that's what ends up occurring. So we've got to go through the steps to get there. And that's the biggest key when it comes to it, that there's a foundation we need to build first. And once we've built that foundation, then can we do anything? So when the kid learns to walk, the kid's like, sweet, this is my foundation. Now I can do other things. I can learn to jump. I can learn to pull myself up. I can learn to run. The foundation is built. And from there, do we move out? But everyone wants to find a diet and go, right, the diet's going to fix something. The diet doesn't fix anything. You fix yourself. And that's the biggest thing. So it's like when we ascribe values and morality to objects, it's often where things go wrong. Because we're like, the scale means something. It's like the scale doesn't mean anything. Get lost. Come on now. It's a piece of plastic. It's like the food doesn't mean anything. The diet doesn't mean anything. None of this means anything. It's the process that you put to it and how you see the process that gets you to the end. So it's like when people often struggle, it usually comes down to an issue in terms of a core belief or a value. So value is something that changes, right? So your value could be like, I love helping people, right? The value on how you help people can change depending on the time. It's not set in stone, right? However, a core belief is something that you reiterate through yourself all the time. It is something some people pick up during childhood, some pick it up during teenage years. It's something that is often how you link your identity to yourself. Where a value is, if you want to think about it, it's family is a big value for me. You know, friendships is a value for me. So that means however I see the world, there's always need to be friendship there in some way or capacity. There always needs to be family in some way or capacity. The identity or the core belief could be, you know, I'm a jacked buff dude. And if I look in the mirror and I don't look jacked and buff, well, I'm going to have a problem now. And that's where the core belief come into play, and where putting yourself and basing your life around values makes a big difference in the long run, because then you get to see how life is truly is in your eyes and what matters to you. And it can change based on you growing as a person, where a core belief never grows. It stays the same because you reiterate the same story day in and day out. And it doesn't take in any new information from around the world. When new information comes in, if it agrees with your core belief, you accept it. If it doesn't, you get rid of it. And that's a problem. A value changes based on how you see the world. So you often see when people have a core belief of they're not worthy, the easier way to see it is if you're wearing a pair of glasses, right, and they're tinted glasses, everything you see in the world is going to be in one color. So that's your worthiness. So that means that if your glasses are yellow for being, you know, I'm not worthy, you're only ever going to see it in that way. If something comes and it's blue, if something comes and it's purple, you're not going to see that color because all you see is yellow, because that's what you want to see, because that's your core belief coming into play. Where if you took the glasses off and go, right, I can see all colors of the spectrum, and at certain times there is going to be yellow, there is going to be purple, there are going to be blues, you start noticing you can actually handle things more. But you're basing your life now on not just how you see the world, but also how you feel and move through the environment where it comes to your values. And that's the big key difference from, how do we say, changing how you feel about your core belief and changing your identity based on how you are moving through the world. So it's like your values are meant to change. So if you look at like, I think it's Brown et al., 1996, they go through a beautiful values exercise, and it gets you asking questions about like spirituality, religion, yourself, your family. And then by the end of the whole exercise, you get to add all the numbers up, and you get to see exactly where you are at on your values. What do you rate highest? And I'll give it a lot of clients for a very good reason, because they end up noticing that what they thought their values were not actually what comes out. They're like, yeah, I'm a very big family person. And then they get a 4. And then they see self-interest or independence is at a 20. And you're like, so why is, values for family, so low, but yourself so high? And then the person's like quite shocked. I was like, oh, I wouldn't say that. And I was like, so what about you stops you from seeing it? And then the person has to go through digging. So now we've gone through, once again, gone through a value structure, but swapped it so they can go through a core belief. So there's something always going to be in the way. So you're playing with the two and you interchange between the two all the time. But it's a wonderful experiment because you actually do get to see a lot of, wow, these are pretty much my values. This is where I see myself the most. But then you also get to then reflect on your own core belief, and then you can change that. You can change the story you tell. It's not set in stone.
I love that. And I was just imagining it as well. Because every time anyone says anything, I kind of imagine things. So everybody pretty much goes through life just wanting to get from where they are now, point A to point B. I need to go to work. I need to go here. It's very hustle bustle. Whenever there's white noise or white space, people feel the need to fill it up. So that is, I'm trying to make it practical for people to use now, because this is a shitload of amazing information that you should actually re-listen to again, but after you listen to the practical aspect of it. So that's the theory behind why you think the way you think, why you act the way you act, why you struggle the way you struggle, and you're stuck in the cycle that you're stuck in. But these glasses that are on, that's because your hands are tied behind your back. You don't have any other, like, you have two arms. You're not an octopus, you're not the centipede, whatever, with all these different arms. You have two arms. You're too busy doing everything else in life that your glasses are left on. You need to pause, you need to zoom out, and you need to take the glasses off. You need to stop trying to go at the speed of Speedy Gonzalez, and you need to actually pause and question yourself, like we spoke about before. Because if you're just going to keep these glasses on and see the world as it is, which is how you are, think about that. You don't see the world as it is, you see it how you are. Because if you're only looking through these glasses, you aren't seeing anything else around there. You aren't hearing. You aren't sensing anything, because sight is the strongest vision, and it's tunnel visioned. As soon as you take the glasses off, you're not tunnel visioned anymore. You can actually hear things. You can smell things. You have unlimited, like, you have the world around you to actually take in, if you allow yourself to. Because if you don't, you're going to keep seeing things as they are, doing things as you are, and staying as you are. So, like you mentioned with the whole reparenting yourself and questioning yourself and realizing, okay, so our values, what are they? The thing is, we don't stop to ask. That's where I'm leading to now. When we actually do the challenge that you mentioned, I've never done it before, but I imagine myself doing it, is you're getting questioned. You're being forced to actually stop and think about what you truly value. We never do that otherwise. We never question ourselves until we get questioned. We never stop to think about what it is we truly love, what it is we truly like. When people say what's the meaning of life, and everyone shuts up because no one even knows how to answer that question. It's as soon as you get asked a question, that is when you're actually forced to stop and think. And that's when the silence comes in, because we're too busy doing, not actually listening to ourselves or questioning ourselves. So do the challenge. Like, actually, I will actually look it up and put it in the links below. But even ask yourself, why am I doing this? What is the purpose behind this? Because I know something that I discovered doing one test, I don't know what it was. I value validation. Like, it's something that I value. I feel validated when, but then there's the core belief, which is pretty much like a need. I like to feel like I belong. So validation adds to that. When I feel validated, I feel like I belong. And I guess where you brought up the identity, or if I'm this buff dude, this is where you may attach. Okay, so I'm going to feel like I belong, and I'm going to feel validated if I look a certain way. But is it really that? Because I guess if I kind of, you just actually got this into my head right this second. I didn't think of it while you were talking. When I was doing bodybuilding and I had the identity of a shredded, the most shredded, lean chick competing on stage that was always lean, season round, off season, on season, whatever. That was my identity. And also because I was training people, I'm like, no, this is like, if I'm not like this, then I'm not going to have any validation from anyone. And I'm not going to feel like I belong anymore. I belong to this identity. And it took me forever to shake that. But I then realized, and I attached it to, It's not the fact that I am lean and I look this particular way that is making me feel validated, that's making me feel like I belong. Sometimes it is as simple as helping someone, doing the smallest thing to make someone smile. Like, I smile at people all the time now. I was a sour bitch sometimes at the gym because I was hangry and tired and all the things that you feel when you're thick skin lean. But I attached it to helping people. The more that I help people, the more that I can reach people, the more that's why I'm doing these podcasts. That's why I put content up on my stories and on Instagram. That's why I guess you know this because of the conversation I had with you. I'm like, that's why I want to get out there so much. It's because the more that I can give value, the more that I can actually get people to realize these things and love themselves first before they be the person you want to be first. Love yourself first. Then you can do the things and have the things you want to have. Like that type of stuff and getting people to change how they see themselves makes me feel validated. And thus I feel like I belong to myself, to what I'm doing. And I feel like I have a place in the world, which is, I guess everybody wants to feel like they belong. But there are other core values that people have. It's just that there's some that have a stronger meaning than others. And I guess this is going to go to lead into our very last topic, which I cannot wait to talk about because I see it all the time. And we touched on this before about we need to start like a child, like we need to start at the basics because less is more. But too often, especially with social media and people starting off on chapter 20s, not chapter 1s, we have option paralysis. Option paralysis, where it's like, oh, do I do keto? Do I do this? Do I do that? Maybe I should do Orange Theory. Should I do CrossFit? Should I do, like, even when it comes to food, like maybe IIFYM, a big one. Oh, maybe this carb, no, that carb, no, that carb's bad. Oh, how about this protein? Like, there's the buffet effect, and then there's the narrow focus, which actually gets you further. So I will let you summarize everything pretty much into that bubble because that covers everything.
Yeah, I think it's funny when you see it often. We always take the assumption that the more options we have, the better we will be for the options. We take it pretty simple. Like if you have more choices to choose from, therefore you have a lot more choices, and those more choices mean you can have a better outcome. So we assume. But what we end up noticing is that we as humans have a very inability to take all the data in. We are not computers. So because of that, the more and more information you give, that means more and more information you need to store. That's more and more information you need to process. And with each extra bit of information, so does the processing power go up, 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 to the point that you're like, I have too much information. So then you're like, I'm going to try a bit of this. I'm going to try a bit of this, try a bit of this. And you keep touching on every one thing instead of just making a decision. So when it comes to making better decisions, you can do it in two different ways. You can be an early adopter of a decision, or you can be a late adopter. But you don't want to be the person in the middle. And that's what people do. It's, I want to do this, 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 this. So the reason behind it being an early adopter is you pick a method, you do it, right? So that's your decision. So that means that if you're in a work position, or if you're doing, say, nutrition, or you're trying to lose weight, your first idea, you pick it. It doesn't matter whether you like the idea or not. You go, cool, that's what I'm going to do. And then that means that if it works, great. If it doesn't, perfect. Let's come up with another idea. And you can see it happen in business all the time. So it's like, okay, cool, we're going to make a jump, and everyone just goes, yeah, how many other ideas there? And people go like, oh, we have 10. We go, cool, pick the first one that someone wants. Let's go for it. Or just run it. You know, we've got the capital to run. We've got the capital to try and see how it'll work. Perfect. In your diet, it's just pick the first diet that comes to your head, go for it. If it works, perfect. If it doesn't, try a different one. You can be a late adopter. You can take all the information in, and you can take a look and go, right, these are the pros, these are the cons. Because you've taken the information in, you can see which is going to fit your life better. But if you're a person who just goes, I'm going to take information and I'm not going to actually sit there and create a structure for myself, you find you pick, and nothing works, because now you get paralysis from too many options because you haven't sat down to narrow the playing field. So you start off with such a big playing field, and when you make a late decision, you narrow it down to what are going to be 5 or 10 options that can work for you. So in every single process, whether you're an early adopter or a late adopter, you're still narrowing the playing field. So you go from hundreds down to 50s, down to 20s, down to fives, down to three, down to one. When you're in the middle of the playing field, there's no point of narrowing it down. You have no option because you on both ends have a whole lot of options. And that's when people overdo it. So instead of just picking something, going for it, or actually sitting down and going, what do my lifestyle dictate? What do I need? What do I need emotionally? What do I need physically? And then narrowing the playing field down to fit that assumption or fit those narratives. We go, I want to pick anything and everything. And then we push things into those narratives, which don't work. Because now we're putting things that don't actually work together, and they don't have the ability to work together. It's like when you start taking someone going, right, if we see it with like dogs, like there are certain dogs that can be with each other and certain dogs that need to be trained to be with each other. You want to put a cat with a dog and they often kill each other. But if you put the cat at the beginning and you understand that when the dog's a puppy and the cat's a kitten, and you put them in the environment and you teach them to be together, they can work. It's the same thing when you diet. You can't just stop chopping and changing until you've sat down and understand the mechanics or how the mechanisms fit together. So be an early adopter or a late adopter, but when we have too many choices, we often will always be paralyzed because there's too many things to think through and we don't have the processing capacity. So we make terrible decisions, period. Don't get anything good when it comes to so many options. And it drives me nuts. But that's where it comes in with a mentor. That's where it comes in with a coach. That's where it comes in with people above you. It is why when you have a lot of options and you're in the work office, you come and you do all the groundwork and you pass it to your boss. And what does your boss do? That's the one. They don't go, we're going to do all of them. That's the one. So you've essentially created all the options and given the playing field to your boss, who creates the one point, the narrow playing field. And that's how you've always got to do it. You can have as many options as you want, and it's wonderful to have as many options. But when you have too many, you're never going to do anything. So you have to narrow the playing field every single time for you to do it. If it doesn't work, that's okay. That means now you have a whole bunch of other options you can then once again narrow down and work through. And it's the same process over and over and over. It's how we create products. It's how we learn how to walk. You have the ability to walk everywhere, don't you? But there is a certain place where you are fundamentally going to be stronger to walk from. And that's going to be around a couch. That's going to be around your parents. It's a safe haven. So you start from the base and you explore out. And that's how that is. Don't start from the position of, look at me, I've got a bird's eye view, I've got all these options, because you're never going to get anywhere, ever.
That's probably the key for core beliefs for everything. It's you need to make your decision. Make the decision. You need to narrow the playing field, but it's cool and all to have to choose out of all the green areas what field you're playing on. You also need to have a game plan. Without a game plan, you're left trying to pick cherries off trees instead of just shooting forward and making cherry juice. I mean, you can pick all the cherries in the world, but until you actually start the process and play the process through, you're not going to get the cherry juice at the end. And that's what we are wanting. So yep. I guess that summed it all up. But if you were to actually give one key learning point for anyone to take from reparenting ourselves to pretty much just being okay with manageable and good enough, not aiming for perfection, which in the human's mind never actually ends up existing, what would you leave us with?
Very good question, actually. Learn to understand your thoughts, understand what triggers them, and actually understand the behaviors that come from it. Because once you can see what triggered a thought, what triggered a behavior, or some idea of where it's going to come from, you can change pretty much anything you want. Because now that means you'll be able to do anything and everything. Because how it's going to look now in your life is that if you can see what triggered that thought, you'll go, right, cool. That came from this, that did this. I can now change the behavior in this way. And once you're in that position, you'll start seeing you're creating an environment based around you and your lifestyle, which is amazing. Because anything and everything in life can be looked at a form of what has triggered it, where did it come from, and how or what are the consequences. So in a CBT approach, it's ABC. So what came before? What was the behavior? What was the consequence? And if you break it down into those three, you will actually be able to see a lot of the things that we do are either primed from childhood or something that occurred because we thought it would be easier to deal with. So it's like we'll see a lot of our eating habits helped us cope back in the day, and now we're using those same behaviors again. So we're like, right, I know where it came from, I know what the consequence is, and I know what the behavior is. I know how to change it. I just need to change the behavior. I can't change the past, but I need to change what's present. So knowing the triggers, knowing where you come from and how, where they come from, allows you to change so much about yourself, but also change so much about where you can go. But it also does open you up for further growth, and that's the beauty of it.
I love that. Just like a maladaptive squat turning into a powerlifter's winner. And just like Dallas is in the driving seat of his car, I guess you can take away from this that you are in the driving seat of your life. So I will leave your Instagram link below. Is there anything else aside from the values quiz and your Instagram link that you want below?
Very good question. No, I think we're all good. I think it's just, yeah, just spend some time with your thoughts is what I recommend anyone do. That's my biggest thing I want everyone to do. Spend some time with your thoughts and see where it goes. You'll be surprised you'll be surprised at what you'll find out.
I love that. I love that. And I will see you guys, well, you will hear us on the next episode.